Today, I'm going to talk about a subject already experienced by about 65% of the world's population, which is the imposter syndrome. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Amira and I'm a Jungian psychoanalyst and a plane integrative psychosomatotherapeist. I'm also a couple therapist, family therapist, coach and mediator. In my videos, I share my knowledge and my personal and professional skills to make you aware of a subject that I will present to you. I will tell you about the problems, the consequences, and the solutions that go with it. So let's go. Imposter syndrome, a term used to describe a psychological mechanism that causes one to constantly question one's own worth. Imposter syndrome is also known as imposter phenomenon or fraud syndrome. I would like to make it clear that this is not an illness, but a psychological pattern. Also, be careful to not confuse the imposter syndrome with certain manipulative people who are in a real imposter situation and who are really imposters. Let's see the difference. The person who suffers from imposter syndrome has an unpleasant feeling of constantly doubting his or her abilities, doesn't feel legitimate in current status, doesn't feel at home in private or professional life, fails to take ownership of successes, in particular by attributing them to luck or chance or to someone else's account. Persons with this syndrome may also think that the source of mistakes at work, school, or in their private life is their own incompetence. They feel guilty about success or failure, overestimate the skills of others, and denigrate their own skills. They fear of evaluation, mistakes, and failure. They have generalized anxiety. The imposter has no unpleasant feelings. On the contrary, he enjoys his imposture. He feels legitimate to take the place of someone else without embarrassment. He usurps the name, the quality, and the title of an individual and pretends to be someone else. He takes pleasure in appropriating the virtues of successes of others. The imposter will not feel responsible for his mistakes and will find someone to blame. He will not feel guilty about his imposture. He will overestimate his own skills, however small, and denigrate those of others. He will prefer high-level positions even if he doesn't have the required skills. He will not be afraid of his mistakes because he knows that there will always be someone to cover him. He will spread false accusations about others. Let us now look at the causes of imposter syndrome. The causes of this syndrome are multiple. First, let's start with psychological factors. Dysfunctional and negative thoughts related to the fact that the person suffering from this syndrome is convinced that he or she doesn't have the necessary skills to carry out an assignment, or because he or she continuously denigrates him or herself. For example, a person who has professional skills but says, "I've been recruited but I don't have the skills for the job and others will notice." In this case, the person doubts skills, doesn't feel legitimate for the job, and is afraid of being found out. Then there are the multiple questions. This is when you tend to brood, including spending a lot of time trying to figure out the why and wherefore. For example, why you were chosen by your superiors, why your spouse chose you, or how you passed an exam. Externalizing merit. This is when you systematically attribute your successes or positive events in your life to an external element. This element can be luck, chance, help, effort, or the complacency of your relatives or superiors. For example, someone who has done a good job but says, "My work is satisfying, but it's only because my colleague or friend helped me." The person finds it difficult to attribute success to him or herself and attributes it to another person. Denial of credit. This is when you deny credit by saying things like, "It didn't take much effort," or "anyone could have done it." Lack of self-confidence. This is when you lack self-confidence and tend to devalue your achievement. Perfectionism and over-investment. This is when you tend to spend too much energy or time linked to the importance or complexity of a task. There are also stress and anxiety. Let's talk about emotional factors. As you know, there are fear of failure, fear of making mistakes, fear of being evaluated, fear of losing one's abilities, fear of disappointing others, fear of the other person's gaze, fear of success. This is the case for some people who may feel uncomfortable with success and don't want to be the center of attention, which may lead them to self-sabotage to avoid praise, doubt, and guilt. Let's talk about social and environmental factors. There is high expectations from society or from an authority figure such as a parent, teacher, or boss. Social hierarchy. As in the case of working and middle-class people, are more likely to feel out of place in their private or professional lives. People who find themselves in a minority are also more likely to feel out of place in their private or professional life, such as the gender minority, for example, a woman at work who finds herself in a men's group, or conversely, a man who finds himself in a woman's team, or as the ethnic minority in a work group. Attachment and upbringing. In other words, those parental and family messages that may have encouraged you too much or discouraged you or told you that it was never enough despite your efforts, or that you had to be perfect or flawless to be loved, leading to overinvestment. How you were taught to be modest and what is your representation of humility. We have seen the causes, now let's look at the consequences of this syndrome. I will present the consequences of this syndrome through its vicious circle. Faced with a new or familiar activity to be done, anxiety effects such as doubt or stress or insomnia are set in place. This anxiety favors either procrastination or over-preparation behavior. If you want to know more about procrastination, I invite you to watch my previous video. Face of these behaviors, there will usually be a positive outcome, but the person will attribute this success to an external element such as luck or effort or another person. This will lead to a denigration of self-worth, often accompanied by a rejection of positive feedback or signs of success. This will lead to a sense of deception, often accompanied by a sense of inadequacy. This will lead to a feeling of personal ineffectiveness for future tasks. The second cycle of this vicious circle that will be put in place will further promote anxiety, which will reinforce the two defense strategies of procrastination or over-preparation, which will result in a success that is attributed more to an external element. This will reinforce this feeling of devaluation with more rejection of positive feedback. This denigration will further encourage the feeling of cheating and the impression of not being up to the task, which will reinforce the feeling of personal inefficiency for future tasks. A third, and then a fourth, and then several cycles of repetition and resistance will set in. Of course, this situation can have other more serious consequences in the long term. such as burnout or damage to relationship in one's personal and professional life, or an impediment to self-fulfillment. As you know, the feeling of imposture cannot be cured with medication, but it is possible to get out of it with the solution that I'm going to propose you. It's here in my psychotherapy office that I will offer you solutions. Choose the one that best fits your problem. First of all, it is important to get out of this vicious circle by starting a psychotherapy session. If you are suffering from this syndrome, you are not alone. There are celebrities like Maya Angelou, Michelle Obama, or Tom Hanks who have shared their experience about this subject, who have overcome their feelings of shame, and who have asked for help from a professional. So get some help. Secondly, it's important to accept, identify, and write down any negative thoughts that are going through your mind. As for all the questions you ask yourself, write them down once and for all in a notebook. Put the notebook in a secret place and don't touch it again. Then put your brain on standby and banish the whys and wherefores that come up. When your brain is more in the state of letting go, you can take back this notebook and answer the questions with because I. Use the I to answer your questions and conjugate your verbs in the present tense. The answers you find will reduce your mental overload and give you more insight. To avoid systematically externalizing your merits, recognize and own your successes. To do this, start by writing them down in a logbook. This will allow you to realize the weight of your ideas and intervention in the accomplishment of your tasks. It will also make you realize that it is not because of others or your lucky star that you have completed a particular project. If you refuse credit or positive feedback, often after a lot of hard work and overinvestment, get a therapist to work with you on your self-worth and also on the balance of giving and receiving. As far as lack of self-confidence is concerned, it is important to get your brain used to recognizing your strengths. This will increase self-confidence and decrease self-doubt. So identify, note, and acknowledge your personal strengths. If you tend to spend too much energy or time on a task, then stop chasing perfection. To decrease feelings of incompetence and increase feelings of self-efficacy, set simple, easily attainable goals, and then gradually increase the level of difficulty of the tasks and most importantly, reward yourself. Learn to admit that you don't have to be excellent at everything to deserve your place, recognition, or love. Don't try to please everyone. For problems of stress or anxiety, identify what puts you in that state and find activities or techniques of letting go to relieve that state. Of course, if you don't know how to do, seek professional help. Let's move on to the emotional factors with the different fears and feelings I mentioned. So inevitably learn to welcome them, accept them, and identify them. If you have a fear of failure, develop a new response to it. For example, like Henry Ford, the founder of the car manufacturer Ford, who said that failure is only an opportunity to start again more intelligently. When faced with the fear of making mistakes, learn to value the fact that you make mistakes and to see them as an opportunity to progress. When faced with the fear of losing your nerve, don't push yourself to the limit for fear of not being up to the task or of believing that you are never sufficiently prepared for an event. Faced with the fear of being evaluated, the fear of disappointing the other person, and all these fears linked to the other person's gaze, I advise you to accept them and to analyze them with a therapist who will help you to overcome them. Opt for a benevolent look at yourself. Distinguish between your feelings and facts by learning to identify the evidence of your success so that you can more easily balance your negative feelings. As for the sociological and environmental factors I mentioned, for example, high expectations, social hierarchy, gender minority, ethnic minority, attachment, education, humility. For all these subjects, I strongly advise you to talk to your therapist. I also give you some advices. Avoid heavy challenges by putting at your disposal all the simple resources to allow your success. Avoid systematically thinking in a devaluing way. Don't always remain discreet by not speaking up or raising your hand. Don't be afraid of negotiation, which creates the conditions for success. Learn to take risks by stepping out of your comfort zone to avoid missing opportunities to demonstrate your strengths and successes. Learn to take a step back. Take care of your physical and mental health in order to perform the crucial tasks and increase your performance at work or in your private life. As you know, awareness is the first step to deliverance. I hope that my video has made you aware of some things and that you will share with your environment. Subscribe to receive future videos. I'll be happy to look forward to reading your comments below and to answer your questions at the email address above. You will find my details on the social networks and on the links posted on my channel. Take care of yourself while waiting for the next video.